All right, so we'll say good morning. Good morning. Let us beginning by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Elul Haba Alinu Latova, Baruch Merina Dubin, in honor of our children and all of the suburban sons and daughters beginning their year of study in Eretz Yisrael. May their Torah study and mitzvos in the Holy Land merit the release of our precious hostages, the success of our soldiers, and the return to their families in the arrival of Mashiach Tzidkinu Mihira B'Yameinu. Amen. Our week of learning sponsors: Joshua Malki Rosenblum, Mishalom and Zahav Rosenblum, Le'ilui Nishmas Yisrael David Ben Moshe Hershel Zichrono Livracha, the brother of Rabbi Gedalia, and our Daf Yomi sponsor for today, Andrea Levine, in memory of her paternal grandfather Yisrael Ben Rav Lezer Vala Zichrono Livracha, on the occasion of his 23rd yahrzeit. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshama Slav and Aliyah, the families in Chama. And with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Ayin Tes 79. We have a lot of incredible Gemara ahead of us to cover. We are picking up Emir Hashem on Ayin Chesem Beis 78b. We are picking up Amr of Shlomo Bar Nachman. It is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines up from the bottom. So remember again, yesterday we ended up with a fascinating discussion regarding foals, little donkelas, right? Little baby donkeys, and how, again, they're called the siach. Why? Because they go ahead and they follow after sicha noah. All you have to do is speak to them nicely, and Baruch Hashem, they immediately follow. So now the Gemara picking up on a little bit of agarat over here. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan. What's the meaning of the pasuk? Al kin yomru hamoshlim. So the Gemara is quoting over here the pasuk in Bamidbar. So the pasuk literally translated is as follows. Let me read it to you. It says, Al kin yomru hamoshlim. Therefore the rulers will say, Ba'u chashbon, they have come to chashbon. Tibana v'sikonin ir sichon. Literally again, build and let it be established, the city of Sichon. Remember again, Sichon was one of the mighty Canaanite kings who Moshe Rabbeinu was able to conquer. So listen to how beautiful this is. What's the meaning of the phrase, therefore the rulers will say? So the Gemara says, Hamoshlim, who are the rulers? Elu hamoshlim biyitzram. Wow. They will say, who are the true rulers in life? The true rulers in life. The true rulers in life are the people ultimately, again, who exert control over their desires. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. By the way, if you just take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment, the Rashbam, this is 2, 4, 6, about 8 lines into the wide lines. Pashte dikra Mairi shekishenilcham Sichon b'melech Moav harishon veikach es kol arzo miyad nisnavu bilam b'chaver shinatzeach Sichon l'Moav umiu parshi yisera. So just to understand the context is speaking about when Sichon went to war with Moav and conquered the area of Moab. But now the Gemara is darshaning it. My Moshem, who are the true rulers in life? The true rulers in life are those who are able to go ahead and control their desires. So we'll say, so remember again, this is reminiscent of the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Ezehu Gibar, what is the demonstration? Who is truly strong? Hakovesh es Yitzro. One who is able to rein in, one who is able to subdue his desires, right? The greatest display of strength in life is when I'm able to go ahead and rule my desires and again, not necessarily stamp them out, not necessarily extinguish them, but to rein them in, to keep control over it and not to let them control me. So the Gemara says, it must be from Ba'u Cheshbon. So what does it mean, Ba'u Cheshbon? Now, literally translated means they came to Cheshbon. Cheshbon is a place. Ba'u is beautiful. Ba'u v'nachshav Cheshbon shalolam. But say sometimes the most important thing in life is to contemplate the greatest calculations of life. What are the calculations of life? Hefsid mitzvah kineged schara, u'schara deira kineged hefseda. To calculate the loss of a mitzvah versus the gain, and the reward or the gain, right? The reward of an Aveira, right, corresponding to its loss. So we'll say this is a very profound idea. The Gemara acknowledges that every mitzvah has a gain and a loss, right? The gain, of course, is eternal life. The gain is schar olam haba. There's so many beautiful gains. What's the loss of a mitzvah? What's the loss? Again, it could be money. It could be time. It would be foolish to think that there aren't, quote unquote, losses involved in mitzvahs. There are. And it's powerful that the Gemara acknowledges that sometimes it is challenging to perform mitzvahs because mitzvahs come at a tremendous expense, whether it's material, emotional, whatever it might be. So therefore, the Gemara says, but what's the secret? The secret is to do your cost-benefit analysis, right? And to recognize, you're right, there is a cost to a mitzvah. There's no shayla. What's the benefit? What's the benefit? And the Gemara says, I can guarantee you that the benefit will always outweigh the cost. Same thing with an Avera. I will say it's incredible. The Gemara says, if you look at these words, the Gemara says, way schar Avera, can I get to say it? You're like thinking, schar Avera? Schar Avera? How can you even write a phrase like that? What's the reward for an Avera? Because what's the answer? What's the answer? There's benefit. There's absolutely benefit to sin. What's the raya that there's benefit to sin? What's the raya? We do it every single day, right? You know what I'm saying? Again, if there wasn't benefit, I'm not crazy. Like I'm not foolish. I mean, I am foolish, but I'm saying, but like, I wouldn't sin. Like the Gemara says, "Ein adam chotei v'lo lo." Person doesn't sin if there's not a benefit. Of course, there's a benefit. Of course, there's a benefit. But once again, am I doing my cost-benefit analysis? There is sometimes ridiculous, overwhelming, such enjoyable benefit to sin. Sin is good. Now, don't take that out of context, right? But Lamaisa, of course, there's incredible benefit to sin, but you got to measure it against the loss. What's the collateral damage? What's collateral damage? So what's your cost-benefit analysis? And I'm going to say, this is incredible. So the motion, this is fascinating. Al kain yomru ha-moshlim. So therefore, again, the moshlim, those who rule over their yetzer, what do they say? Ba'u cheshbon. Let's do a cheshbon. Let's do our cost-benefit analysis. What's the cost of the mitzvah versus the benefit? What is the benefit of the avera versus the loss? And I'm going to say, it's a cause and effect. How do you become a moshel? How do I become someone who rules over my yetzer? So the Gemara says, only if you engage in the analysis. When I think it through, because what the analysis does, I will say, is, for most of us, just to say, I need to stop sinning. Saying I'm going to stop sinning doesn't really work. Doesn't really work, right? Because, okay, I've said many times I'm going to stop sinning, I still do it. I need to work it through. Bo cheshbon. There needs to be a calculation. I need to sit down and really understand for myself why I should or why I shouldn't do this. And I will say, it's just not simple, but it's this cost-benefit analysis, it's this cheshbon that allows me to become this moshel. Incredible. Tibana v'sikonin. So literally, again, will be built up and established. This is beautiful. Imata osekain tibana ba'olam hazeh v'tikoni li'olam haba. This is absolutely beautiful. If I do this cheshbon, if I really engage in this calculation, this cost-benefit analysis, then I will be built up in this world and established in the world to come. The benefits of the cost-benefit analysis. And I will say, Chazal, right, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is very confident to encourage us to engage in the cost-benefit analysis. Why? Why? Because the Ribono Shel Olam is absolutely assured about what the result is going to be. Right? It's never a safek. It's never a safek. In other words, the benefit of the mitzvah will always outweigh the costs, and the costs of the avera will always outweigh the benefit. That's just the way that it is. And if you do that, you become a moshel. And if I become a moshel, then I'm built up in this world, and I establish my chelik in the world to come. What a Gemara. Ir Sichon. What does it mean, city of Sichon? It makes him Adam Atzmo ki ir zeh shemahalich achar Sichanoah. Rabbi said, this is beautiful, beautiful. If a person makes himself like an ear, Rabbi say ear is another name for a foal, a young donkey. So if a person makes himself like a little donkey that follows after Sichon, Siach, pleasant conversation, which means that if a person allows himself to be easily swayed by his Yetzer Hara, that as soon as Yetzer Hara whispers in my ear, do this, the Rashbam says, Ki ir zeh shemispata biyitzro u'b'divrei apikoris ve'eno moshel biyitzro. If I allow myself to be enticed, and I allow myself to be swayed by the whisper of the Yetzer Hara every single time, right? And I never put up a fight, I just follow along with it, Maksiv acharov ki eitz yatsa mecheshbon. What does it say afterwards? A fire will come out of cheshbon. Teitze eish mimachshavin v'tocha asheina machshavin. So we'll say, what'll happen? So a fire will come from those who think from the moshlim and will burn those who don't think the emotion. And I will say, now what is that a reference to? It's actually quite beautiful. The Maharsha comments on this. Sorry, Rashbam comments on this. He says, "Teitze ish min ha'machshavin had tzadikim v'tochal sheinu machshav kitaminu v'perkin kol echa ve'echa nichva michupas shechavero." Because remember, we had this just a few days ago that in the Messianic era, everyone's going to have a chuppah. I will say, but what is your chuppah going to be made out of? What is it going to be made out of? It depends. It depends. First of all, what it's going to be made out of depends, and how many chuppahs, so to speak, you're going to have depend on your life. So what happens? So if I allow myself to go ahead and be easily enticed by the Yetzer Hara, what's going to happen? Literally, the fire of the Moshlim will come and consume those who are not Moshlim, those who are just follow after the Siach, follow after the Yetzer Hara. What does that mean? That whether it's Mashiach or Olam Haba, whatever it is, I'm going to see my friends, right? And I'm going to see the beautiful chuppahs that they establish for themselves, and I'm going to be so terribly embarrassed that I couldn't get my act together in this world and wasn't able to produce for myself a beautiful chuppah as well. That's what it means when it says that the fire of others will come and consume those who follow after the Yetzer Hara. So profound. Mikiryas Sichon, Mikiryas Tzadikim Shenikru Sichon. So literally again from the city of the Tzadikim that are called trees. Achla Ar Moav, consumed Ar Moav. What does that refer to? We'll say this is beautiful. Zeha Mahalich Achar Yitzro Kiir Zeh Shemahalich Achar Sichanoah. This refers to someone who follows his Yetzer Hara, right? Just like the foal, just like the young donkey follows nice conversation. I will say it's so profound. It's almost as if a person you have a choice. You have a choice. Do you want to go ahead and be a moshel or a donkey? That's it. That's the choice. Donkey or moshel. Now, it sounds so strange that really feels like there should be something in between over there, right? But Lamaisa, there's not. There's not. Either I control the Yetzer Hara or I follow it. If I control it, then I'm the moshel, I'm the ruler. And if I follow it, then I'm a donkey. Those are the options, right? That's what's on the spiritual menu. And I have to choose which category I want to be in. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Balei Bamos are known. What does it refer to when it says Balei Bamos are known? Elu Gase Haruach. This refers to arrogant people. The Amar Mar call Adam Sheyesh Bo Gasas Haruach Nofel Begehenim. Any person who's arrogant ultimately goes to Gehenim. V'niram, it's always interesting, by the way, of the lashon of Nofel Begehenim, that any person who goes in is arrogant falls into Gehenim. So remember again, I will say, you can have Gehenim. You don't have to wait to die to have Gehenim. People often experience Gehenim in this world. And the truth is, when a person is arrogant and totally oblivious to whatever their shortcomings or faults may be, they end up making terrible mistakes. And those mistakes could often land them in a Gehenim that is in Olam Hazeh. That could also be that lashon of Nofel B'Gehenim. That again, I'm in this world, my arrogance blinds me to so many things. As a result, I make some catastrophic mistakes that ultimately land me in Gehenim in this world. Avad Chashbono Shel Olam. So we'll say, so the person who is arrogant, ultimately, chas v'shalom, thinks that there's no God and there's no cheshbon, right? There's no din, there's no judgment. So the Gemara says, ad divon, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hamtein ad sheyavo din v'nasim. Sorry, ad sheyavo din. Wait. So the arrogant person thinks that there's no God, that there's no judgment. The Baruch Hu says, okay, just wait. He'll see after he dies that there is in fact judgment. V'nasim ad nafach. Top of Ayin Test 79a. He will see, the arrogant person will see that there is judgment when he comes into the fires that don't need to be fanned. Which are the fires that don't need to be fanned? A reference to Gehenna. Second line 79a. Ad Meidva. Ad Shetadiv Nishmasan. So ultimately, what does it mean? Ad Meidva? Ad Meidva. Until the neshama is in pain. V'amri la ad da'avid mai deboy. Ultimately, again, until HaKadosh Baruch Hu does to the neshama, ultimately, again, what is necessary. So we'll say, that's the beautiful drasha with this particular pasuk. And what a profound musar. What a profound musar. Be a moshel or be a donkey. That's it. Those are the options in life. And the Gemara is giving us a profound strategy. And I will say, sometimes we're faced with the temptation to sin. So there's two things. So we're faced with the temptation to sin. And the Gemara gives us a strategy. What should you do? I'm struggling with an avera, which happens every day. What should I do? The Gemara says, take out like your proverbial ledger, right, and start doing pros and cons, cost-benefit analysis. Now, two things happen when you engage in the cost-benefit analysis, right? Number one, just logically, you begin to see the benefit of the mitzvah always outweighs the cost, and the collateral cost of the avera always outweighs the benefit. That's number one. There's something else that happens. Generally, when you take the time to do the cheshbon, by the time you finish doing the cheshbon, what has also happened? The fires of passion have cooled down a little bit. And I will say sometimes the greatest strategy, Rabbi Nachman writes about this, that sometimes the greatest strategy in the avoidance of sin is count to 10. Count to 10. Person, I should say, I'm going to do the Avera. I'm going to do it. I'm hinli muchan muzuman. I am going to do this. And I'm going to do it well. But you know what? I'm going to do it in 10 seconds. So the Rebbe suggests sometimes it's incredible to see that if I just give myself, right, I'm going to do it. Don't tell yourself you're not going to do it, because if you say you're not going to do it, you're going to lose that battle. But if you tell yourself, I'm going to do it in 10 seconds from now, the Rebbe suggests that often that just little bit of time of abstinence allows me to just like cool down a little bit. And suddenly again, I don't need to do the Avera. So the cheshbon that the Gemara is describing over here really serves, I think, a twofold purpose. Number one is that the cost-benefit analysis itself is a powerful tool because you emerge with an important truth about Averas and Mitzvahs. And it's also an excellent stalling mechanism. And the Rebbe says sometimes all you need are just those couple of moments of buffer in order to kind of get back control over yourself and avoid making life mistakes. Incredible. Amar Yehuda, Amar Rav, what says Gravel Gemara, Kol haporish midivrei Torah eisha chalasa. Whoever again separates himself from Divrei Torah, literally again, fires consume him. So we'll say, so you could go ahead and read this pasuk as a punishment, that a person who separates himself from Torah, so fires Gehenna, fires consume him. So we'll say, perhaps, Shneemar, v'nasati es panai bahem, me'ha'esh yatzu va'esh tochleim. So we'll say, it's also very possible that it's not a punishment, it's a cause and effect. It's a cause and effect. Eish, fire, doesn't have to be the fires of Gehenna. Fire could also be, again, the fire of desire. And what the Gemara is talking about over here is, if I don't have Torah, I have absolutely no tools in my arsenal to fight against desire in this world. And we know this from our own lives. We'll say, the stronger I am in my spirituality, the more equipped I am to face the challenges and the wants and desires of life. Again, it doesn't mean they go away. Remember, again, we have another concept. What's our other concept? That the bigger the tzaddik, the bigger the Yetzer Hara. So there is this fascinating idea that the holier I get, the more intense my personal struggles are. Yet at that same time, the holier I am, the more tools I have in my personal toolbox to be able to fight against the Yetzer Hara. But if I don't have Torah, if I don't have a strong spiritual identity, if I am not embedded in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like you saw about Reb Tzaddik, if I'm not, so to speak, making brachas and bringing HaKadosh Baruch Hu into my life, I don't have the tools to fight the Yetzer Hara. Jose, I just want to point this out. You see this, right? You see this in greater society. You see this, that the more society pushes to pull God out of the fabric of day-to-day life, the more the immorality and the more all of the craziness seeps in. This is not a Jewish thing. It's not a Jewish thing. This is a humanity thing. The Ribono Shel Olam and His presence is the great stabilizer, the moral stabilizer for humanity. Remove God, and all types of fires come in. We're living through this. This is what we see. Remove the Ribono Shel Olam, remove the 10 Commandments, remove the semblance of just basic religiosity, and all kinds of things happen. So it's not a punishment. It's not a punishment. It's a cause and effect. The Gemara goes on. Rav Dimi came along. He said, "I'm Rabbi Yonasan. Kol haporish atzmo b'divrei Torah nofel b'gehenim." So Rabbi Yonasan says, whoever separates himself from divrei Torah ultimately falls into Gehenna. They're both saying, at first glance, right, this is very strange. Why is this very strange? Sounds like the same statement. Okay, he uses Gehenna instead of Eish. So if you look, I'm assuming everyone has it. If you look, there's like a little aleph over there by Atzmo. So Hagos B'Tziyudim changes this to Tzarech Lomar Kol HaMerapeh. Now we'll say Merapeh means what? weakens. See, watch this. Rabbi Yehuda is saying, Kala Porish. Rabbi Yehuda says, if you go ahead and you separate yourself, right? Literally again, separate yourself. Porish means I pull myself out. If I pull myself away from Torah, I have no tools to defend myself against the wants, the desires, the proclivities that seek to derail me. I'm a train wreck. I'm literally going to be a train wreck. Comes along Rabbi Yonas says, by the way, it's not just if you're Porish. Even if you weaken your connection. Wow. Porish means I'm totally pulling out. Merapa means at the end of the day, I weaken my connection. I weaken my connection. So be honest, it's not just if you're Porish. Let's say, we know this. The way Ruchnius works is if I'm not building it and bolstering it every single day, then I leave myself susceptible to the wants, the desires, the lusts, the proclivities, all the things that derail me. It's not just enough to be embedded, but I have to make sure that I'm strengthening that bond to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that bond to my Ruchnius, every single day. Because if somehow, we know this, just to be honest, I'll say, again, we're amongst friends, What happens when you miss a day shir? What happens when you miss a day shir? Don't raise your hand and scream out, because I know, right? We all know. What happens when you miss a day? Your day's not the same. Your day's not the same. You miss a day of davening tefillah b'tzibur. It's not the same. It's not. Okay, you can make up the information. Okay, there's a podcast, there's a million different shiurim. There's no problem with getting the Torah. There's no problem with that. We always speak about this. What we do every morning is not simply learn. You can learn anywhere, anytime, certainly at more convenient times. What it means to be kovea itim laTorah, to set aside time to learn, means I'm actively strengthening a bond. It's not just about getting information. You can get the information anytime, listen to it at whatever speed you want, do whatever else you're doing while you're also listening to that information, right? And fantastic. Great, so you've gotten the information, but you haven't necessarily strengthened the bond. This is the part that sometimes we miss a little bit. Talmud Torah, being kovei itim laTorah, is learning, yes, but more importantly, strengthening the bond to the Ribono Shel Olam. And the stronger that bond is, the more prepared I am to face the challenges. Miss your kviyos. If you do whatever, okay, I'm still learning some information, but I miss my kviyos, I miss my established thing, the bond is not as strong. Bond is not, we know it. We know it from our own lives. If I miss it, there's something that's different. You know what that's called? That's called the bond is not as strong. That's what you feel. That's what I feel when I don't get what it is that is part of my daily life. That's what, the bond is not as strong. And we know what happens when the bond is not as strong. The day is different. I'm different. My approach is different. My strength, right? My walls are different. Everything is different. It's incredible. The goal in life, I will say, is that if we could just embed ourselves and strengthen that bond, be a moshel, don't be a donkey, don't separate yourself, right? Don't even allow the bond to weaken. If I could keep that bond strong, it doesn't mean I'm not going to commit averos. I'm a human being. But at least in Meretz Hashem, I have the tools in my spiritual toolbox to be successful. Let's go weiter. The Gemara goes on. Shneimar Adam Toa Miderach Haskel Bekal Refaim Yaniach. Ve'in Refaim Ela Gehenim Shneimar V'lo Yidek Refaim Shama Am Keishal Korea. Fine. We'll say back to the Gemara. Macha Ashba, Macha Zavla. We'll say, so what happens if you sell Ashba is literally a garbage dump, but in this case it's really like a composting field, right? So let's say if I sell the Ashba, I also sell the manure inside. It's not Hasam. So we'll say very interesting Gemara over here. Tanan awesome. Kolaroy lemizbeach v'lo lebedek habayis. Lebedek habayis v'lo mizbeach. Lo lemizbeach v'lo lebedek habayis. We'll say there are three different levels of hegdish, right? Three different levels of hegdish, right? Items that are hegdish and are usable for the mizbeach, for the altar, right? Paradigmatic example of that, or not examples of that are animals, wine, flour. Animals, wine, flour. Those are items that are fit for the mizbeach. Next are items that are fit for bedek habayis, right? Bedek habayis are things for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. And then the third category are things that are not really fit for the mizbeach and not really fit for bedek habayis. A good example of that would be food. Food. Actually, the Rashbam points this out, all of this over here. He says, if you take a look, he says, "Kol haroilim is be'ach v'lo lebedek habayis." It's right across from Tosfos ve'ein mo'alin b'masha b'socho. So Tosfos says, "Kigon shor v'kesev ve'eis timimim." So again, obviously the items that are fit for the mizbeach, but not for bedek habayis. That's talking about like animals, flour, good. Habayis for the bedek habayis for the mizbeach. You go zav v'kesev. What's an example of items for bedek habayis? That's gold, silver, precious stones that literally could be used for the actual Beis HaMikdash, for the building of the Beis HaMikdash. And then there's the third category of things that are not fit for the Mizbeach and ultimately not really usable for Bedek HaBayis. And the Rashbam's example, he says, that's for example, I donate milk, or I donate cheese, food, essentially food. Food is not fit for the Mizbeach. You can't really use it for the actual physical upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash. So these are items you give to the Beis HaMikdash sells it and uses the money for something consecrated. Okay, so now let's go. Tanan Hasam. Kol haroilim mizbeach lo bedek habayis. Any item that is fit for the Mizbeach, but not for bedek habayis. Lebedek habayis v'lo lemizbeach, or it's for bedek habayis and not for the Mizbeach. Or lo lemizbeach v'lo lebedek habayis, or items again that are not for the Mizbeach and not for bedek habayis. In all of these cases, ma'alin bahen or b'ma shebesochan. We'll say if they are consecrated, if you commit me'ila. Remember again, me'ila means illegal, mundane usage of consecrated property. So you commit me'ila if you use any of these items or that which is inside of them. So the Gemara says, what is that? Ketzad. Here we go. Hikdish bar malaya mayim, if I makdish a pit, and the pit is filled with water, right? Ashpos, malayos, zevel, or I go ahead and I makdish an ashpa, a garbage dump, a composting dump, right? And inside of it is manure. Shovach malayonim, or a dovecote filled with doves. Sodeh male asavim, or a field filled with grass or with herbs. Ilan nasoi peros, or a tree that is filled with fruit. The halach is Rabbi says, so in any of these cases, if I makdish any of these items, so the item inside of it also becomes hekdish. So I makdish the bar, the water also becomes hekdish. The shovach, the dovecote, the doves also become hekdish. So you commit me'ila both with the item and that which is quote unquote inside of it. Aval, Rabbi say, now this is all presupposing that what? This is all presupposing that at the time that you were makdish the bar, the water was inside of it. The doves were inside of the dovecote, right? Or we'll call it the item inside was in the exterior item, so to speak, at the time that the exterior item was consecrated. Aval, but if I consecrated a pit and the water was only added in afterwards, ashpa v'yachach nismal zevel, or I consecrated the ashpa and the menorah was added afterwards, shovach v'yachach nismal yonim, or a dovecote and the doves came afterwards, ilan v'achakach nosaperos, I consecrated a tree and the fruit only grew afterwards, sada v'achakach nismal yasavim, I consecrated the field and the vegetation only grew afterwards. They're both saying all of these cases, molin bahen ve'ein molin b'masha b'sochim the Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says then the ila only is on the original item and not on the item that subsequently, quote unquote, grew in it. So both say incredibly important, right? So this is the position of Rabbi Yehuda. So if you go ahead and you consecrate the item, right, and the other piece of it is already present at the time of the hekdesh. So I consecrated a bar, the water was already in it. I consecrated an ashpa, the zevel was already in it. Everything is hekdesh. But if for argument's sake I consecrated the bar and the water was only introduced later, ashpa, the zevel was only introduced later, then the bar and the ashbar are hekdesh, but the items inside are not. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Good. Rabbi Yossi says, no. Hamakdish esasad v'asailan molan b'hanam b'giduleyan mibnei shehem gidulei hekdesh. Rabbi Yossi says, no, not true. The halacha is, even if you were first makdish, the items and then the interior items came afterwards, Rabbi Yossi says still, everything is hekdish. Why? Because they're all considered to be things that grow from hekdish. That's the idea over here. So the water, so to speak, is viewed as growing from the pit. The zevel is viewed as growing from the ashpa. The yonim, right, the doves grow from the dovecote. The trees grow, the fruit literally do grow from the trees. And therefore all of these things are considered to be hekdish derivatives. And the halach of hekdish derivatives is they're also hekdish. Beautiful. Amar Rabbi. Rabbi says as follows. Here we go. So Rabbi wants to splice this. Isn't that actually very interesting? Rabbi wants to say, I think that we follow Rabbi Yehuda by a bar and a shovach. Meaning what? That let's say if you have a pit with water. So I think we pass on Rabbi Yehuda, which means if the water was in the pit at the time that the bar was made hegdish, then the water is hegdish also. But if the water came later on, the water is not hegdish. But yet we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. We should pass like Rabbi Yossi, ultimately again by a sada and an ilan, by a field and by a tree. Now, Rabbi say, what's the difference between the bar ashpa cases versus the sada ilan cases? What's the difference? It's a clear difference. By the sada and the ilan, right, the herbs and the fruit are literally growing from the hegdish item. So I understand why we would say those items, even though they weren't present at the initial consecration, should be hektish. Why? Because they're literally growing from hektish. They're receiving their sustenance from hektish. Contrast that with the water and the manure. Right? The water and the manure were just simply placed there in the pit, right? Or in the garbage dump after the pit or the dump became hektish. Right? So therefore, you're going to both say they don't have to be hektish. They weren't part of the original consecration, therefore there's no reason to assume that they should be hektish. So Rebbe wants to make this interesting distinction that will follow Rabbi Yehuda in the case of bar. In the case of bar and shovach, davkot, and will follow ultimately again Rabbi Yossi in the case of the sada and the ilan. So the Gemara says, "Hi, Mas, let's analyze this." So Bishlam near Rabbi Yehuda bar v'shovach. So I understand when Rabbi says that we should follow the position of Rabbi Yehuda in the case of the bar and the shovach. Right? So we should say like Rabbi Yehuda, namely that halacha l'maisa. If the water was not in the pit at the time of consecration, but only introduced later, so the pit is consecrated, the water is not. If the doves were not in the dove coat at the time of consecration, but introduced later, the dove coat is hektish, the doves are not. So I understand that. I understand when he says Nir and Rabbi Yehuda bebar v'shovach michlal de palig asada ve'ilan, because we can infer from that Rabbi Yehuda would argue on the case of sada and ilan. Ella nirin divrei Rabbi Yossi besada ve'ilan. Both say second on the wide lines. But when we say that, we should see the position of Rabbi Yossi by the case of sada ve'ilan. The right that Rabbi will hold like Rabbi Yossi ultimately again in the case of the tree and the fruit, which means that what? That even if I initially consecrated a barren field or a barren tree, and then fruit subsequently grows, that will say that that fruit will become hekdish as well. So the Gemara says, Michlal de palig bebar v'shovach. Ultimately, again, so we can infer from that he argues, that Rabbi Yossi argues in the case of bar and shovach, v'ha Rabbi Yossi sada ve'ilan kamar. Rabbi Yossi is not commenting on bar v'shovach. Rabbi Yossi is only commenting on the case of sada and ilan. V'chi tema l'dvar Rabbi Yehuda kamar. Maybe you say that Rabbi Yossi is addressing his comments in accordance with the words of Rabbi Yehuda. V'tanyam Rabbi Yossi. Ein ani roa divrei shel Rabbi Yehuda b'sada ve'ilan mevnei shen gidulei hegdish. So I'll say, but yet Rabbi Yossi is explicitly on record as saying, remember, Rabbi Yossi himself is only addressing Sada and Ilan. That's all he's addressing. And Rabbi Yossi himself says, I do not agree with Rabbi Yehuda in the case of Sada and Ilan. Why? Because again, Rabbi Yossi's whole logic is, even if you just makdish the tree without the fruit, when the fruit subsequently grows on the tree, that fruit is being yonik, it's deriving its sustenance, and it's literally growing from hagdish. So the Gemara said, so it's only in the case of Sada and Ilan that Rabbi Yossi disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda. Ha bar v'shovach roa. But by Pashtos, Rabbi Yossi would agree with Rabbi Yehuda in the case of the bar and the shovach. In other words, that even Rabbi Yossi agrees, I will say, that if I'm makdish a bar, I'm makdish an empty bar, and then I introduce water later on, then what should be the status of the water? Not hektish. Right? Why? It makes sense because the water, technically speaking, is a separate entity than the pit. So in other words, the status of the water need not follow the status of the pit. And it seems like even Rabbi Yossi agrees with that. Bless you. That's what it means to say. So this is what Rabbi really meant to say. Listen to this. That ultimately the words of Rabbi Yehuda appear to be correct to even Rabbi Yossi in the case of bar v'shovach. Rabbi say, but it sounds like according to Rabbi is like this. In the case of bar and shovach, everyone is going to agree to the following case. If you're makdish a pit, we're just going to go with bar. If you're makdish a pit that is filled with water, then what's halacha? What's hagdish? What's hagdish? What's hagdish? Everything. Right? Because you're makdish a bar with water. And if you're makdish a bar without water, and you introduce water later on, what's hagdish? The bar, and not the water. And everyone's going to agree with that. Everyone's going to agree with that, right? The Gemara says, so even near and different Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Bar V'Shav, even Rabbi Yossi will agree with that. Rabbi Yossi lo nechlak, shaf Rabbi Yossi lo nechlak, alav ela b'sada v'ilan, aval b'bar v'shovach modile. Because only cases Rabbi Yossi argues in Rabbi Yehuda is the case of the field and the tree. See, we'll say, in the case of the field and the tree, let's just take the tree. A makdish a tree, an apple tree, right? But there are no apples on it, right? Then apples grow on the tree. So Rabbi Huda holds that Allah Chalamaisa, the apples are not hagdish, only the tree. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Rabbi Yossi says, no. The apples are hagdish. Even though the apples were not there at the time that I consecrated the tree, since literally the apples grow from the tree, the apples have a hagdish status. But it's only in that case that Rabbi Yossi disagrees with Rabbi Huda. But in the case of the bar and the shovach, he will agree with Rabbi Huda. Incredible. So Tana Rabbanan. So we'll say, let's go right there. So Tana Rabbanan. Hikdishan mrikanin v'achakach nismalu. If I was makdish, ultimately again, now it's not clear exactly what this is referring to. Which case is this? But so we'll just translate it now. I was makdish the item when it was empty, and subsequently it filled up. So we'll say, what's talacha? Molin behind vein, molin b'masha b'sochan. I commit mi'ilah with the item itself, but not with anything that subsequently filled it up. Rabbi Elazar Shimon Omer, af molin b'masha b'sochan. Elazar Shimon says, no, you could even commit mi'ilah even with that which subsequently filled up the item. So what is this? Amar Rabba, machlokes b'sada v'ilan. It's machlokes by sada and ilan, by field and trees. Why? Tanakama savar like Rabbi Huda. Tanakama holds like Rabbi Huda. I will say Rabbi Huda always holds. Rabbi Huda's position is as follows. When you're makdish an item, the only thing that is hegdish is the item that you are being makdish at the time that you're being makdish it. That's it. Anything subsequently that grows, that fills in, Rabbi Huda holds is not hegdish. So it must be ultimately, again, Tanakam holds like Rabbi Huda, and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion that at least by a sada and ilan, anything that grows from the field or the tree that was hegdish, itself becomes hegdish, even though it was not present at the time of the hekdesh declaration itself. Aval, bebar v'shovach tivrei hakol molin bahen vein molin b'masha v'sochan. So we'll say it sounds like the Gemara is going ahead and reaching an interesting conclusion over here, which is, let's start with what we agree with. Everyone will agree that if you're makdish an empty pit, or you're makdish an empty dovecote, and then subsequently water comes into the pit, doves come into the dovecote, everyone is going to agree that what? That the pit and the dovecote are hekdish, and the water and the doves are not hekdish. That's something everyone's going to agree on. What's the machlokes case? I was makdish a field or a tree, and a field or a tree had no vegetation. Then subsequently vegetation grew, so now what's the halacha? Rabbi Huda will say, just the tree and the field are hekdesh, any vegetation and fruits are not. And Rabbi Yossi will say no, the vegetation and the fruits are hekdesh since they grew, since they're hekdesh derivatives, they're hekdesh as well. That is our point of contention. Incredible. Let's go weiter. So the Gemara says, Amalei Abaye, ve'elo hadisanya. But Abaye says, what do you do with the following brisa? Hekdishan molin bahen, or masha b'sochan. If you are makdish the item when it was full, so ultimately you commit milah with the item and that which is inside of it. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon machlif. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, he goes ahead and, so we'll say he changed his position. So the Gemara says, V'i b'sada v'ilan amay machlif. Now we'll say, if we're talking about over here a sada and an ilan, so then why does he have to change his position? We'll say 79b. Amar Rabba, here we go. Machlokes bebar b'shovach. The machlokes ultimately again is in the case of a bar and the shovach. Aval. So we'll say, so now, okay, so look what Rabba just did. Rabba just totally did a 180 over here. Absolutely and completely flipped this. So the machlokes is by a bar and the shovach. In other words, that's the machlokes of Rabbi Yossi. Aval b'sada v'ilan divrei hakol molin b'hainu masha v'sochan. When it comes to sada and ilan, everyone agrees that Allah Chalamaysa, you commit mi'ilah with the original object and even any subsequent item that grows, even if it was not there at the time of the hekdish. So we'll say, so now again, so this is a total 180 from what we were saying before. Up until now we were assuming that everyone agreed in the case of the bar and shovach, and the argument case, the machlokes case, was in the case of Sada Ve'ilan. Now the Gemara is reversing it and saying no, the Sada Ve'ilan case is the case where everyone agrees that halacha l'maisa, Right, even if you were makdish a barren sod, a barren tree, and items subsequently grew, those growths are hekdish. What's the machlokes? The machlokes is in the bar and the shovach case. I was makdish an empty bar, then later water was introduced. I was makdish an empty dove coat, and then later doves came in. So Rabbi Huda will say the water and the doves are not hekdish. Rabbi Yossi will say that they are. That they are. The Gemara says, okay. So let's analyze this. Over Malay in my plea. So Gemara says, so what's the machlokes over here, right? Let's talk about this in just a moment. So what is the machlokes case? When we talk about, again, if they're arguing in the case of an empty bar and an empty dovecote, what are they arguing about? And in the case of a full bar and dovecote, what are they arguing about? Here we go. We'll say, if we're talking about a case of being makdish, an empty bar, an empty pit, or an empty dovecote, and then again, subsequently, water comes into the pit, doves come into the dovecote. What's the machlokes? Here we go. It's the machlokes Rameir and the Rabbanan. The Tanakam Savalok Rabbanan, the Amri Ein Adam Makne Davar Shelo Bali Olam. So Rabbi says, listen to this. The Rabbanan hold that in general, ultimately, again, a person cannot be makne adavar shabbat, which means you can't be makdish, which literally means you can't convey ownership of something that does not yet exist. Does not yet exist. So therefore, the Rabbanan ultimately hold that the water in the pit, right, or for that matter, again, the doves in the dovecote are a davar shalabal olam. It doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. So because it doesn't yet exist at the time of the hektish, therefore what? It can't become hektish subsequently. On the other hand, Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Meir, who holds that no, a person can be makne davar shalabal. You can convey ownership of something that does not yet exist in the world, and therefore again I will say what? Even when the water subsequently comes into the pit, or the doves subsequently come into the dovecote, you can be makna that. You could go ahead and literally again give that over to Hagdish. So Rabbi says, 1 second, let's talk about this. And I will say, we've seen this many times before. And I will say there's a very important qualification, because I understand the position that says, you can't convey something that doesn't exist, which makes sense. You can't engage in a transaction with something that is not real. If it doesn't exist, it's not real. But what's the pshat that you can engage in a transaction with something that does not yet exist? What's the pshat with that? So I will say the Gemara gives a very important qualification. When do we say Adam makne davar shelo bali olam? When do we say that you can convey ownership of something that doesn't exist? Amar, here we go. The Shams Rabbi Meir Kigon Peros Dekel Da'avidi Da'asu. I would say, even if you accept the premise of Adam makne davar shelo bali olam, that you could convey ownership of something that doesn't yet exist, it's true, but it has to be something that may not actually exist, but we know that's what? We know it's coming. For example, right? I could convey ownership of dates from a date palm. Why? Because I know the dates are coming. I know they're coming. In other words, that obviously could there be some type of thing that wipes out the date palms? Of course. But I know that in the natural order of things, I know that the dates are coming. So because I know that they're coming, I can, I want to be clear. One opinion says, no, you can't do anything with the dates because the dates don't exist. You can't engage in transactional law, or you can't engage in a transaction with something that does not physically exist. But yet there's another opinion that says, yes, you can. But even that opinion that says, yes, you can only do that with items that you know are going to come into existence. The Gemara says, David Asi, honey, I will say, how do you apply that to the case of a pit with water? See, I know that the date palm is going to grow dates. I'll say, how can you go ahead and be makdish water which doesn't exist in a pit? Maybe the water will come, maybe the water won't come. In other words, there's no guarantee. In other words, dates are naturally part of a date palm. So therefore, again, there's an opinion that says you could transact something with those future dates, because I know that trees grow dates. Pits don't grow water. So because pits don't grow water, how can we say that any future water that comes in is automatically hektish? To which the Gemara says, Amarava, Mishkachas la b'mayim haba in derech hatzero lebar. V'yon haba derech shov chol l'shobach. Okay, we have to be talking about a case where this is actually very interesting. We have to do the following case. I'm being makdish my bar, right? That's the case of here. I'm being makdish my bar. So it must be that Lamais, we're talking about a bar where this bar is in my field or next to my field, right? And I have water in my field that I'm actively channeling to the bar. So I am controlling the process. So I know ultimately again, that there's a pool of water in my field, and I'm going to be actively channeling that water to the bar. So because I control the water, therefore again, according to the opinion that says that you could be makne a davar shelo bali olam, because I control the water, it becomes like the date palms. Just like the dates are going to grow on the palm tree, so too I could say the water is going to come into the bits. Same idea with the doves, right? This dove coat that I'm being makdish, I have another dove coat, right? And that dove coat has doves, and this new dove coat is right in the line of the journey of my old dove coat. So I know that the doves from dove coat A are going to go to dove coat B. Beautiful. Over Mulayim my pligi. So both say, so that's what they argue about. So that's what the machlokes is when it comes to an empty pit. Right? When it comes to an empty pit, so the machlokes is, can you be makdish a davar shalab ali olam? Can you consecrate something that doesn't yet exist? One opinion says yes, one opinion says no. So the opinion that says no, okay, therefore again, when the water is subsequently introduced into the pit, even though the pit is hagdish, the water will not be hagdish. The other opinion says that Allah again, you can be makdish a davar shalab olam. You can even be makdish something that doesn't yet exist, and the case is going to have to be what? The case will have to be a situation where halacha l'maisa, I control the water flow from the other field into this pit. Fine. We'll say in the case of the full pit or the full dovecot, what are they arguing about? Amarava kigon shehekdish bar stam. So this is interesting. Both say in this case the machlokas will be as follows. What if I have a pit filled with water? I do have a pit filled with water, and I go ahead and I makdish a bar. That's what I do. I say I'm being makdish my bar. Shabbos says, so what's the shaila? Does that include the water or not? Rabbi Lazar b'Shimon Savarla kavod amar danin din gavoa mi din hedyot. Shabbos said this is very interesting. So Rabbi Lazar b'Shimon holds like his father, and he holds that in general we learn at the halachos of hagdish from the halachos of din hedyot, regular transactional law. Ma din hedyot matzi amar bira zavini lecha ma'ilo zavini lecha. When it comes to regular transactional law, if I sell Ruvain a pit, I can make the argument I sold you a pit, but I didn't sell you the water. Af din gavoa bira aktish ma'ilo aktish. So too again, halacha l'maisa. When it comes to makdish a pit, I can say I makdish the pit, not makdish the mortar. The Tanakama savra in donin din gavoa midin hedyot. The Tanakama ultimately again says, but we don't learn out the laws of hagdish from the laws of regular transaction. The Gemara says, 1 second. The din hedyot law, is that true? That regular transactional law, when I sell a pit, it doesn't include the water? Vatnan, we learned, machar bar, machar meimar. Well, says Mishnah, if you sell a pit and the pit is filled with water, the sale of the pit includes the sale of water. Amarava, masnisin yichidahi. The truth is, our Mishnah reflects a singular opinion. The Sanya, machar bar lo machar meimav. That if you sell a pit, you don't sell the water. Rabbi Nassan omer machar bar, machar meimav. So interestingly enough, it seems to be that the majority opinion is that when you sell a pit, you don't sell the water. So therefore, again, the machlokes over here in a full pit is, if you just say, I'm being makdish my pit, does being makdish my pit include the water or not include the water? That's the machlokes. So both say, we'll have to stop it for today. Admit it, you did not think we were going to finish, right? The pace we're going on Amar Aleph. It's okay, I saw it in your eyes. And let's say, so again, tomorrow we'll just finish off because we did not do the halacha l'maisa. So we have to see halacha l'maisa, how do we paskin in this case? In the machlokes, Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi, ultimately again, both by the Sada V'ilan and the Bar V'Shovach. We'll start with that Rambam tomorrow. Shkoyach. Jack, have a great day.
Why don't we bring in the argument of the Ayin Yafeh? Why don't we just say